Perfect. See if Joey joins. Cool. Okay, 12:01. How are we doing? Let's just start off. Oh, Phil's disappeared. Are we all good? We're all happy? You cold? You look cold.
Lovely British weather.
Yeah, exactly that. Okay.
No, standing by
Let's.
the bridge is cold, I'm telling you.
I thought you were on Menai for a minute. I had to take a second look.
Perfect. Okie doke. Let me just do something a second. Let's move this over to here, just so I can look at the right direction. Okay. A couple of people that are in at the minute, you've already know my background, but I'm doing this for the people that we send the recording to. So those that can't make it at lunchtimes. So I'm Matt. That's John. We are from the Rent to Rent Property University. We've been in property for about 5 years, and we've built up a portfolio. We're bespoke sources, and we also coach and mentor. So this is week 3 of our 13-week series, and this one's going to be a good one. Hopefully you'll get some knowledge from it. Joy is just asking if I can let her into the room, so let's do it. There we go. Perfect. So as I said, I'm Matt. I worked at sea for 12 years. I had a little girl, and I quickly realised that having that little girl meant that being at sea for long periods of time, I wasn't going to see her. I wasn't going to be a major part of her life. So I decided to do something. I tried Forex trading. I tried Amazon FBA. I tried day trading. I tried crypto, all sorts of different things to try and make some income, but none of it was reliable. None of it was, I knew enough about it. And at that time, there weren't training programs and things like that about it anyway. Then, lo and behold, a Facebook advert popped up for a free property training weekend. Well, a £1 property training weekend. So I went on that, and my mind was blown open. I was the mug, if you like, that ran to the back of the room with his credit card, paid for a 12-month mentorship, didn't tell my wife, and the rest is history. And we're here today. So that's my background. And that's who we are. So, welcome. Let's crack on with the day. Here we go. So, by the end of this session, you'll understand the step-by-step process of deal analysis, the actual how you analyze that deal. The key financials to consider when you're taking on a deal. So many people underestimate the refurb, underestimate the furnishing costs, the staging costs, all of that sort of stuff, and the system costs. Common deal breakers and red flags. I really need to oil this chair. It's creaking like crazy. And red flags to avoid, and then how to confidently assess and compare deals. What you should get yourselves to a position, if you're doing this correctly, is you'll know your area. We'll run briefly over that, but you'll be able to look at a property in your area and know pretty much straight away whether that's a deal or it's not a deal. And the way that you do that is, as I went through all through last week, is collecting that data, doing that research. So, for example, if you know that a 3-bed property in that area achieves X amount per night, you know what rent you should be paying for that property, you know roughly what the bills are going to be, you should be able to see a property on Rightmove and go, yes, at that rent in that location with those photos, that property works. And it takes away all of the work at that stage, which is why we focus so much on the research. Excuse me. Cool. So, deal analysis. So, what you need to consider before you proceed is obviously the location. So, postcodes can make a massive, massive difference. When you're looking at things like Manchester, for example, I use that one quite a lot as comparable. When you look at Manchester, you've got some posts M1, M2, M3, M4, M19, M20. It's a vast area. So to just say deals in Manchester is, you're way off the mark. You need to know, right, I need a deal in M1, M2, whatever it is, M11, M19, whatever your target is, you need to understand that postcode because it can be like night and day from one postcode to another. You've obviously got to understand the demand in the area for the property, and you get that. Obviously, there's systems and things like that you can use, but our way is the old-fashioned way, looking at the actual properties in the area that you can compare to understand okay, their calendars are looking extremely healthy. That's the type of property we're looking for. Okay, so that's why we go the old-fashioned route. Revenue projections based on all of your data. Now, it's not an exact science. Okay, it's rent HMO is different because with rent HMOs, you kind of know, okay, a ensuite bedroom done to a good standard in this area will achieve £650 a month, right? And that's as simple as it is. When you've got SAs, the price, particularly if you've got dynamic pricing involved, your pricing fluctuates on a day by day basis. One week you might be charging £80 for the room or for the property. The next week you're charging 85. The next week you're charging 90. The week that, I don't know, the Six Nations is on in Twickenham, right? That weekend, the prices are going to be through the roof. So it's not an exact science, but we need to use the data that we've got to understand what our projection will be. And we always try and go conservative of this. We don't, take that high figure and go, right, that's what we're going to achieve. We go conservative, we go on the general price for the year, and then, weekends like you get Rugby Six Nations or, concerts or whatever it is, they're bonuses, right? I've told this story before, but when Eurovision came to Liverpool, prices went absolutely through the roof. Okay, but you can't base it based on something like that. You need to base it on your average, and then that month people made 12 months worth of profit in 2 weeks. It was ridiculous. But then your recurring costs as well. You need to understand what your recurring costs are. So they're generally utilities, any software fees you've got, council tax. You can then apply, maintenance to that. Again, that's not an exact science because sometimes the maintenance will be covered by the guests because they've done damage. Sometimes you've just got to go in there and tidy up the walls. There's a few suitcase scuff marks and things like that. So you factor in a margin for your maintenance, but again, some months you'll use it, some months you won't, some months you'll use more. It's not an exact science. And then profitability checks, so projected income versus expenses. So obviously that's what what the profit is going to be on that unit. Again, you've got to factor in seasonality into that. So January and February versus July and August. How does that affect your income? But generally speaking, if we can, make a profit or worst case scenario, break even in the low months, then we're going to be absolutely fine in the high months. And although we focus on contractor accommodation, and that generally is a 12-month, the demand for contractors, apart from a couple of weeks over Christmas, it does still, the prices do fluctuate throughout the year because generally speaking, contractors, businesses, companies, they're all aware that those properties would achieve more as a holiday let, and therefore they've got to pay a premium through the summer months. Okay, it's not a case of we can charge you £85 per night during the winter, but then you can have that price during the summer as well. It simply doesn't work. You have to up your prices. Cool. So we'll jump in, and this is what this session is going to be all about. We're going to jump into a live demonstration. So what we do and how we do it. So we'll jump on Airbnb, all the different OTAs, and we'll assess the prices. We'll look for sort of online platforms for accuracy. Now, you can use places like AirDNA and Property Market Intel. For me, I don't think they're actually that accurate, as I've discussed in previous sessions. I won't delve into that too much here, but you can use those if you want to. But yeah, initially the old-fashioned way, whilst you're getting used to the process, works. Okay, once you have an understanding of the process and the area, then yes, by all means, use Property Market Intel because you'll be able to say straight away, no, actually, they're full of crap. The prices are wrong because you understand and you fully know the area. So let's jump in here to. I've actually closed that down when I shouldn't have closed it down. Whoops. Okay. So there's a couple of different things that I'm going to show you. I'll start with this one. Okay. Which is our area analysis sheet. Now, if you stick around to the end, you'll be able to, you'll have a little treat in store for you with this. But this is our area analysis sheet. Okay. So what we do with this one is you've got SA down the bottom, HMO, and you've got an agent log. Okay. Agent log is self-explanatory. You know, you document every agent that you speak to and what the comments were and the name of them and things like that. Okay. HMO, that's not what this series is about, but that's in here. But SA is the one that we're focusing on. So what we do is we pull up this document, and across the top you've got number of beds, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Number of bathrooms in each one, so a 2-bed with one bed, 1 bath, 2 bath, 3-bed, 1, 2, 3 bath, 4-bed, 1, 2, 3. You know, you can see how that goes. And then we've got January weekdays and weekends. So what we always advise is that you jump in to Airbnb, which is what we're going to do in a second, and you pull 5 comparables for each style of property. So a 2-bed, 1 bath, a 2-bed, 2 bath, a 3-bed, 1 bath, 3-bed, 2 bath. Now look, you're not going to get 5 comparables for every single one, but if you can pull as much data as you possibly can out, then you'll be doing well. Now, contractors generally, you're going to be looking in sort of this area here, okay, the 3, 4, 5-bed properties. 6 and 7s, you don't really come across those very much, and 2 beds, they don't really work for your contractors. But if that's your target market, then by all means, you can extract the data for that. And you do that for January, 5 comparables for weekdays, 5 comparables for weekends, February, March, April, all the way through the year. Now, what you'll find is if people are running their calendars correctly, you won't actually be able to pull much data any further forwards than about 3-4 months in advance. Ahead, and that's because they've got their calendars blocked out to avoid getting your short-term stays. The reason we do that, just to give you all an idea, is let's say in the middle of March, I got 1 week booking in one of my properties. But everything March and February or the back end of Feb is empty and March is empty. But let's say on Friday this week, somebody comes along and says, hey, goes on Airbnb, I want to book a property for 2 months. And they put that into the search criteria. Your property, because it's got that 1 week at the back end of March, won't show up on their search. So you just disappear. So because we're targeting long-term stays, we limit our calendars. Now, depending on the property, location, demand, etc., there's varying degrees of how aggressive you go with that. You know, we've got one unit that isn't even online. It's not on Airbnb. It's not on booking.com because it's purely contractors. We get a 6-month booking and then we work hard to get another booking. If we haven't got another booking, we'll put it live on Airbnb, but we'll only put it live for, say, a week or 2 weeks whilst we look for another long-term booking. Okay, so it depends what the property is and the location as to how aggressive you go with it. But this is essentially where we're inputting the data. Okay, and the way that we do that then, let's go back to share another screen. There we go, Airbnb. Okay, so I'll jump in here and we'll just do Chester. Okay, we leave the dates empty and we leave how many guests empty. Get rid of that. And then we come over here to the filter section. Let me zoom out the way over to there. And we come down, we want entire homes, and then we just start with this. So 2 beds, 2 bedrooms, 2 beds, and let's do that. 3, 3, and 2. Okay. So it's telling me 870 properties in the area. Now, they don't all show up on the map. Okay. So do jump across to the list, right? And start working your way through these. So just pick one that you think you can compare with. Now, something like this is very unlikely to be able to achieve a property like that on a rent-to-rent basis. Not impossible, but unlikely. So using
high spec. You want to avoid that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You avoid the high spec, right? Because a landlord of something like that is very unlikely to give it to somebody on a rent-to-rent basis. If you are purchasing the unit, of course, you can, you know, and that's your intention to get it to that standard, then absolutely, you know, use those as comparables. But for rent-to-rent purposes, we couldn't use that as comparables because we'd never be able to compete. So we look for properties which we could compete with. Okay, so something like this, it's a little bit dated, but we could compete with that. Okay, something like this we could easily compete with. That looks like a, you know, a fairly new unit that's been set up by a rent-to-rent operator, if I'm being honest with you. Okay, we could compete with that. Okay, something like this, hot tubs, we don't touch them. They just cost way too much money. right? So this is what we would be doing. That is a very, very basic one. So we could use this as a comparable. So what we'd then do is we'd jump into the calendar. Okay, now their February diary is looking pretty healthy. Obviously, anything pre the 12th is going to be blocked out anyway because it's already gone. So we're looking from the 12th forward. So it looks as though they're fully booked now up until next Friday. Then they've got another booking from the Tuesday until, by the looks of it, Saturday. And then March, they've got booking 15th to the 22nd. So this is the other reason doing it this way is really helpful, because if you just looked at property market intel, you wouldn't be able to see this visually and understand, actually, this is really, this is a good calendar. Anything more than about, 6 weeks in advance, people do book very, very last minute at the moment, particularly contractors. Contractors book on a Friday to go on the Monday. So we're not overly fussed if the diaries are empty for sort of April and May. This one's not. It's already got a splattering of bookings. But this would be a good comparable, based on that, on the photos. And then we know it's in Chester. Location wise, it's, within within that red circle. So then we'd go in and we'd start extracting the data. So we'd go, right, this is a 4-bedroom, 4-bed house with 2.5 bathrooms. So we could put that into our spreadsheet and we could say, okay, a week or weekday in March is 161. A weekend in March is 277. A weekend in April is 299. A weekday in April is 184. And you get the process here. So we go through this and we just extract it. Okay. This is right at the start of your journey when you're doing your analysis. It's mind-numbing work, but it can be done on a laptop, sat on in the evenings in front of the TV. It's very, very simple to do. But this is how we would do it. Okay. And we run through as far as we can. I mean, these guys have left their calendar open fairly far into the future. Now, what you want to be aware of is using dynamic pricing and pricing softwares, you can stipulate that the further into the future it goes, the higher the base price becomes. And that's basically saying, look, if somebody's going to book me for a week in August now, then they're stopping me having a long-term booking, so they're going to pay a premium, right? So it's only going to be, £5 a night, £10 a night, something like that. But you can't, by doing it this way or using any system, you cannot tell whether they've got that system plugged in. But what you'd end up here by doing this is you'd have all of the data to plug into something like this. Okay, so that one would fall into, I'd put that as 4-bed, 3-bath. I put it there, weekends, weekdays, weekends, blah, blah, blah. And then these will auto-populate, and at the end, then it gives you an average for the year, right? Obviously, we need to be aware, and when you're stress testing your units, you need to look at, okay, what's the lowest month in the year for that area, and use that just to make sure it's going to work in the low months. But then you use your average throughout the year for actually running your analysis on the deal. So that makes sense to everybody. Just drop a message in the chat, just a thumbs up, a 1, whatever you want. There we go. John's dropped a 1. Stephen's dropped a 1. Cool. Okay. So that's how we'd run our analysis. Then what we'd do is we would simply where's it gone? Where's it gone? Where's it gone? Excel. Right, let's do this one. Can you all see Google there? Like Airbnb?
Nope.
No? What can you see?
No.
There we go.
There it is.
Teething issues, technical
Yeah.
issues. So then what we do, okay, let's imagine we've done this for all of the different sizes that we're targeting in that area. Then what we do is we jump in and we go, right, we're going to Google Chester. Okay, and we're going to go Chester developments. And we just research the area. What's happening? Ambitious new home plans for Chester City Centre. So that was July last year. So we'd look into that. If there's a hospital in your location, there could be, a new hospital wing. I know that Countess of Chester's having a new maternity ward built. All of these things, you're researching the area. So Chester developments, Chester, I don't know. What would we search? Chester regeneration. Okay. And we'd click these and just see what's going on. We'd read through all, anything on the Chester website, one city plan, the 15-year strategy. So we'd look into that. All of this is giving us an understanding and a what can you guys see right now?
Google.
Yeah, Google. Cool. That's fine. It's the first time having two screens, so that's why it's getting a little bit confusing. But yeah, we just Google absolutely everything about our area to understand what is going on in that area, what could be happening, what's currently happening, what's the plans for the future. You might find out that they're completely regenerating the town centre, that they're building a new hospital, a new school, whatever it is, it could lead to understanding what the demand is for that area. Okay, so that's the sort of analysis and research stage. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So then what we do is we would then jump into this next spreadsheet, which is a lovely little spreadsheet here. Okay. Now this is specific for rent to SA. Okay. Now we jump into this and we would run our analysis based on this sheet. Now, as you go down the sheet, you fill in all the information and it will give you your bit. So let's actually do a live demonstration. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use £120 a night. So we're going to look for a 4-bedroom property in Chester. I'm going to use £120 as my weekday price, and I'm going to use £130 as my weekend price. And let's see where that gets us to. Okay, so let's look for properties to rent in Chester. If you've got any questions, by the way, please drop them in the chat or just unmute yourself and speak out loud. It's absolutely fine. So we're going to look for houses, and we're going to look for a minimum of 3 beds in Chester. So let's have a look. So that would be a HMO. So this is a 3-bed, one bath, 3-bed, a 4-bed. Here we go. Immediately available. Quite a nice spec. Really good spec, actually.
No bathrooms, apparently.
Yeah, 0 bathrooms. Although there's a photo of a very nice bathroom toilet there. So let's have a look at this one. Wrexham Road in Chester. So that's not far from me, actually. Shouldn't be saying that live on a webinar. But okay, so we're just on the way out. Because I know the area, I can tell you straight away that area it won't really work for SA. But for our example, let's use it. Okay, so we've got a 4-bedroom property, very nice spec, nice kitchen, nice bathrooms, very nice property that would do extremely well if it was in a slightly different area. So what we'd then do is we'd come over here and you'd fill this in. So you'd put in, address. Oh, got a comment.
Yeah, Stephen's just asked, why wouldn't that one work for SA?
Okay. Yeah, let's have a look at that then. So let's go back to the map before we start analyzing it. So when we're looking at Chester, you can kind of see already on the map, you've got hotels this end. Your main holiday let is going to be within the ring road there, right? That's your main holiday let market. And then your contractor market is actually further north, right? This sort of area. Down here, there's not actually a lot. So this entire estate here is no, not that. This entire estate here it's a new build estate. This is a business park. You don't get a lot of trade from that. You've got a Holiday Inn down here, but it was a Holiday Inn built probably about 30 years ago. There's not actually a lot going on down here. You would say yes for contractors, you can jump straight on the A55 or straight down the A483 and you're down to Wrexham. But if they're working in Wrexham, they're going to stay in Wrexham or close to. If they're in Chester, for holidays they'll stay within the ring roads. Ideally, the best places for contractor markets is this sort of area, not out here because just the area is not very nice, but up this area is where you want to be for your contractor market. And that's just because I know the area, I know the contractor market. From there, they're straight up the A41 or up the M56 onto the M56, going towards, into further into England, or they're straight up onto the Wirral, right? So the north side of Chester out here is where you want to be for that. Down here as well, particularly this particular property, this road is quite a pain in the backside, and then it's down on this estate, so they can't access it from here. So actually, it's not the most convenient. There's nothing around there. Even the gym there, hospital. It's a private gym, hospital. It's not really one that's going to drive a load of bookings. So it's just purely from my knowledge of this area that it just simply won't work. There are a couple on this estate that have tried to do short-term lets, and they've given up because it just doesn't work. So yeah, you want to be sort of north of this area here, anywhere there or north. This sort of area, Hull area, that's perfect, absolutely perfect. Straight on the 56, out, and you're on the main roads. Does that make sense?
Would it make more sense then, not to call you out, although I do that every day, would it not make more sense to do the right move search for CH2 and look at that north side of the city?
Yeah, let's do it. I just picked a nice fancy one, but yeah, let's have a look at the map and let's pick one that is in an area that could work.
That's just dwelling on my point of how a postcode can make a difference.
Yeah, so that's a 3-bed. Let's change this to 4 beds. Let's see what's around. So here we go. So we've got that one's going to be too expensive. They're HMOs, 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 HMO, HMO. Lots of HMOs around, aren't there? So to avoid getting loads of those, let's set the base price at 900. So we've got a 6-bed there, and we've got a 4-bed. Let's have a look at the 6. Let's see what it is. As I said, this is you could do something with that, right? I know it doesn't look great at the moment. It looks like an ex-HMO, but you could do something with that for a contractor market. You could, right? 2,800. I presume that's the price. Yeah, it's a student accommodation, so that would be the price as if it was a HMO. So let's keep looking. There's not much stock, and this is the other thing you'll come up against is you won't have loads and loads and loads of stock. Right, let's look at this one. So a 4-bed. Not blowing me away in any way, shape, or form. But again, the right interior design, a little bit of investment, maybe change the flooring, paint the cupboards, it could work, that one. It could, okay. So what is that one? That's a 4-bed, 1-bath, okay. So simply because there's not much stock around for 4 beds, it's let's run with that one. So what I'll do now is we'll work through this sheet. So you've got the address, the area, postcode, you fill all of that in, property type, what it is. In this column here, what I like to do is come over, grab the Rightmove link and drop it into here. And I'll come on to why in a moment. Then you pop in the advertised price, so 1,200. Offer made, when you put your offer through, document that. Always document absolutely everything you do, okay? First listed and what the outcome of the offer is. They're considering it, they want more, always document these bits. Then you come down to deal projections. So how much is it going to cost to furnish you a 4-bed? Well, that one, it looks like it needs pretty much everything. So we're going to drop in, I don't know, 7 grand, right? Because it's going to need carpets and things like that. What's your deposit? Well, we work on that as we discussed last week. We work on bringing the deposits down as far as we can, if not no deposit, but with deposit replacement insurance. But let's just, for argument's sake, say the deposit's going to be 1,200 quid. And the refurb, so that's the actual paint, decorating, staging costs, all the rest of it is going to cost you, I don't know, £1,000 if you do it yourself. Okay. And then any other costs, obviously, we're trying to help you guys to get your own deals, but if you've paid a sourcer, you can pop it in there, all of these different bits. So to actually take on that deal is going to cost you £9,200 plus your first month's rent if you haven't got a grace period or things like that. Then we keep working down. So pretty much anywhere in grey, we want to be looking at filling in. So advertising and marketing for you guys at the moment, it's going to be £0. Rent's going to be £1,200. That one, mortgage repayments or rent repayments during refurb, we're going to get grace period, so that doesn't count. There's your council tax. So I think it's about 138 in that area. Heating, power, electricity. Don't underestimate this, okay? Get the data you need to from places like Compare the Market, USwitch, all of that. Go onto there and pull the data. But don't just take it as, oh, well, it's a 4-bedroom house. It's going to be what they say is the standard for a 4-bed house, because contractors, Airbnb market, they don't care about the heating. So roughly, let's say 180. Okay. Your water rates, again, go onto Google, research these for that specific area, but let's put 50 in there. Now, repairs and maintenance, it depends on the size of the property, the standard, the finish, everything else. But a good rule of thumb is to put £100 a month towards that. As I said, some months you won't touch it. Some months you'll use £120. Some months you'll use, absolutely nothing because the guests are paying for the damages they've done. It's all down to that. Virtual assistant is more so when you're growing your business and you've got multiple properties, you're bringing people in, but for now it's a £0. Insurance costs. Now, insurances are a personal thing for you guys. Everybody thinks that, okay, I've furnished this property, I'm going to pay for the insurance. That's fine for 1 or 2 units, but then when you scale and you've got 10, 15, 20 units and you're paying out, £200 a month in insurance costs, even more probably, 300-400 quid in insurance, it doesn't make financial sense. For us, we're generally covered with Airbnb that any damage to the furniture they pay for. The landlords have to have insurance for the property itself. So it depends on your risk appetite whether you want to go down this route. I personally do not get these properties insured because, for example, I bought a TV once. I had this cold caller ring me and say, "Hey, you've just bought a TV. Do you want insurance for it?" And I thought, well, no, because I've got like 40 TVs. If I insure all of them, I could afford to buy a TV every single week. It's not worth it. So we don't. And then fees, it depends, how you run your business, if you've got any fees or any costs involved. Your certification, this will come down to whether you're covering that or your landlord is covering that. Again, that comes down to the negotiation and the contract you have at the start. But gas and electricity certificates, if you budget about £30 a month, you should be fine. If your landlord's covering it, then that becomes a £0, which is obviously where we want to go. TV license, I think it's about £14.25 at the moment. TV and internet, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to get internet for about 30-35 quid. Consumables for your rental units. So this depends on what you put in them. Some people go above and beyond, put face masks, toiletries, coffee pods, coffee machines, all that sort of stuff. Some units they don't, and they just put tea, coffee, sugar. That's it. But it depends what you want to put in. If you budget, I don't know, put £25 in there. Investor funds. So if you're working with an investor, you've got to put funds. The interest payments in there. And if you've leased your furniture, this is something that's not often talked about, but you can lease your furniture from various companies. By lease, I mean you own it at the end. It's like having a car on PCP, on HP. You'll just pay monthly for it. So if you're paying monthly, you'd pop it in there. So that tells you then that your total costs per month are 1,737. Now, we come down to this, which is your sort of basic information. So weekday nights booked. So let's do, what does that work out as? I think it's 21, isn't it? And weekend nights booked 8, right? So you've got is that right? 29, let's do 22 in there. So your weekday price, I think I said earlier, 120 we're going to say. And then your weekend price, we're going to do 135. Now, they are just rough estimates that, we'll see how that plays out. Then we come down here and we say our minimum night stay that we'll ever do is a 2-night stay. Cleaning fee and linen fees. Now, look, when you are advertising your properties, it's completely up to you how you do it, but we advise that you charge your guests. Okay. Now, cleaning costs, minimum wage, all of that has increased. So when we're charging a guest and we're charging the guest £85, if the clean and the linen changeover and everything else actually costs you more, so let's say it costs you £95 and you're charging the guest £85, you need to put £10 in there, right? So that's per stay. Okay. That will then account for the fact that you're losing money on your cleaning, so it puts it into the spreadsheet. So there we go. So this is saying that total profit we're going to be at is 1,424 at 100%. Now, this section here is when it gets interesting. Okay, down here. So the green is our 50% occupancy, and the sort of whatever color that you'd call that is our 75% occupancy, as it's depicted on the left here. What we try and target is that it breaks even. So we want that to be a 0 or a positive at 50%. If it's, £5, £2, whatever, we'll look at it. But we want that as close to 0 as possible. And this one, which is where we kind of target to be throughout the year, obviously we want to be sat at 85, 90%. You'll never be at this figure, because if you're at 100%, likelihood is you've got a contractor. To get the contractor, you've likely offered a discount. So you'll never hit this 100% figure. So if we're happy with this one, right? So let's say that that's 711, right? Just for argument's sake at the moment, £711, which we times that by 12, which comes to £8,532. So this is how we're figuring out the numbers here. Now, we know to get into this deal, it's actually cost us 9,200. So point number one here is this deal does not pay us back within the 12-month period. Okay, where's it gone? There. Point number two is it doesn't break even at 50% occupancy. So those are the two bits that we're looking for to figure out, is this deal a good deal? Now, let's say that these figures are correct, right? What we would then do is we'd come back up the top and we'd say, okay, our rent to make this deal work, where would our rent need to be? So we'd test it and we'd say, okay, at £1,000 and £1,000 on the deposit, this deal now makes 911 per at 75%, and it breaks even less than 50%, which is great. And it makes £10,932 throughout a year, which it's only costing us £9,000. So £1,000 works. What happens when we go to 1,100? And we come down here. Okay, it's making 811. I mean, that's pretty basic. So that's making 9,732, and it's costing us 9,100 to get into the deal. So you start to form a picture of where your rent needs to be to make it work. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Have you got any questions on this at the moment? No, nobody? Okay, cool. That's fine. Now, what you might be able to do, okay, let's say that they won't go for 1,200. Okay, sorry, 1,100. They're sticking at 1,200 and they're sticking at a deposit. You can negotiate and say, okay, no worries. To do this, we're going to have to, recarpet the floor. Are you open to contributing to that? Yeah, no worries. We'll redo the carpets. Fine. Right. Well, let's we'll redo the carpets and we'll paint for you. So actually, to get into the deal now is 7,200. We're back at the 711, but we know that that makes more than 7,200. So it's all about building a full picture of the costs involved and the repayment time. It doesn't always come down to it doesn't work because the rent's too high. It could come down to it works at that rent because it does. £711 works. The 105 at 50% doesn't work in my mind. But that could be a sort of one that you look at and you think, okay, yes, this could work. If the demand is there, and you're confident that you're going to be sat in this bracket, then that could be a deal if the landlord is prepared to do some work to the property, right? So this then forms your offer based around the figures. You can go back to that landlord and say, look, really like the property. This is our formal offer. What we're going to do is we're going to offer you the rent. We're going to offer you the full deposit. We're going to sign it for 3 years with an annual break clause. However, we will go in and paint and decorate the property, but we need you to redo the carpets just because they're just not up to standard. And that offer then could be taken up by the landlord. They're getting the rent they want. It could work, Or alternatively, what we'll do is we'll do a month free rent and we'll change some of the carpets ourselves. So actually you're lowering that down, or, look, we'll get rid of the deposit and we'll do half a month's rent up front. So actually your cost of getting £6,000, but you're paying for the carpets, but you're making that money back by not paying the deposit and not paying a full month's rent up front. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Does everybody understand the spreadsheet and what we're looking at when we're pulling all this data together and why we're pulling that data together? Yeah, give me a thumbs up. Yes. Yep. Perfect. Okie dokie. Now that's a very, very sort of quick overview of it, but essentially you can see how you start with the analysis, you pull the data so you understand exactly what that property can do, and then you input it into your analysis and you work out the numbers. Now, one other thing that you can do with this one, let's jump back into here, is on the left-hand side, you've got your occupancy, but then you've got your rate. Okay, now you might say that 120 and 135 is your sort of your lowest of your low, right? That's the lowest it's ever going to get to. But through July and August, we're going to be higher than that. So we might be 115%. So of those rates, so whatever that works out as. So then we drag that down there, and this is now saying that at 115% of those rates, at 20% occupancy, it's making that. At 50%, it's making that. So actually, you can see just by changing the prices by 15%, you're making an absolute killing, even at 50%, and a fortune at 75%. Now you can't use this data to go forwards with the deal, but you can forecast, okay, through summer, the prices are going to be extremely high. We might say, okay, in our very, very worst month, we're going to be at 85%. Are we happy with those figures? Right? Is that, oh, this is at £600. Sorry, my bad. Are we happy with these figures? So in our really worst months, if we still achieve 75% occupancy, we're still making £344. Whoops. So you can stress test this. Now, that's one way of stress testing it. Obviously, the other way is to come up here and actually change these prices. So we might say, right, we might be at this during the height of sort of summer and high season. Okay, we can see where the prices are going to be. So you play around with it and you stress test it, and then you wrong location. You might come in and say, okay, what is the lowest I could go to make this property work? £80 a night doesn't work for me, right? Because even at 75%, I'm still losing money. But £90 a night, does that work for me? Not really, but it's I've got to do something seriously wrong to get it from 120 and 135 to 90. So let's see what it's at 100. Okay, we are making money at 70%. It's not a lot, but we are making money. So then you start thinking, okay, well, even if it's really bad, and this is where your dynamic pricing comes in, you can start playing with your pricing and saying, right, well, actually, 105 and 110 is my lowest base price that I'll ever put these properties to, right? And then you can forecast everything from there. I hope that makes sense. I obviously know this inside out, so I do go through it quite quickly. But yes, I hope that makes sense to everybody. Any questions on that at this stage? Nothing at the moment? Okie dokie. So let's just go back to our lovely spreadsheet, our lovely presentation. So phrases you'll hear all the time, and just to sort of give you an understanding of what they are, because when you get into property, I did some social media content about 2 years ago about all the different acronyms in property, and it gets very, very confusing when you're new to it. But yeah, so you've got your ROI, okay, return on investment. So that is the profit versus the costs. Okay, now your ROI is very simple, but then you've got ROCE, which is your profit based on the capital you've employed. So it's not a case of your monthly profit, it's how much has this cost me to do versus what is it going to make me, right? So they're two different ones. We haven't got ROC in there. Then you've got your cash flows, so the difference between money in, money out. Your yield percentages. Sorry, can't say that word today. So you've got your gross and your net, which will result in your annual ROI, your return on investment. Now, obviously, your gross and net, you've got taxes to take into account there, maybe staff costs, all that sort of stuff. Eventually, when you get to a certain size, you'll have VAT to take into account as well. And then your break-even analysis. That's one that we've been through in that spreadsheet. Your 50%, your 75%. You want your break-even 50% or less. I mean, the best deals that we've ever done, we're breaking even around about 32%. And you can imagine that breaking even at 32%, you're making a lot of money for the rest of the month, which is a very nice place to be. Cool. Okay. So good deal versus bad deals. So good deal, high demand areas, strong ROIs, and positive cash flow. Okay, this is where the stress testing comes in, the understanding of the area, all of that comes into play, because you always want to be in positive cash flow. Okay. The very worst case scenario is you have 1 month a year where you have a slightly negative cash flow, but you need to mitigate that as much as possible. So if you can be in negative slightly, let's take January, for example, but you're only negative by £30, but the rest of the year you've profited, 8, 9, £1,000, £1,200, you can take the 1 month, right? But what you don't want is several months being negative, which is why we run the deals the way that we do. Deal breakers. So not only do you need to understand the rent that you can pay to landlords, but you need to understand the actual market rent for that property. Okay. All day long, we see sources that go out to landlords for a property that should be letting out for 1,500 quid, and they're offering landlords 1,900 pounds. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but even £100 in rent can have an impact on your profitability of that property. So it's no good just saying, well, yeah, it works on the spreadsheet, but is that rent similar to what you should be paying on the open market? Okay, this particularly comes into account when you're dealing direct with landlord and it's an off-market deal and things like that, because you don't want to be paying inflated rents. The other thing that does is, let's say you get, I don't know, 18 months in and the market has changed or whatever happens, right? There's this very worst case scenario here. This, it doesn't happen, but worst case scenario is the deal doesn't work as well as you originally predicted, and you decide to either offload it to a bigger operator that maybe has better systems or something like that. I'm just picking ideas out of my head here. Or you try and put it on the open market and just have it as a rent to single let. Well, if you're already paying inflated rents, it's simply not going to work. You're going to be constantly in negative. So it's not going to work. Low occupancy. So when we looked at the deal on Airbnb, they had very good occupancy. It starts to worry me when I start looking at new areas and everybody's calendar is empty for the next 2 weeks. That's a red flag to me. If it's empty in 2 months, I don't care. If it's empty in the next 2 weeks across the board, that's when I start to worry. Okay, so that's a major red flag for me. And then extra costs. So you need to factor this in. People can be quite sneaky sometimes. There is a ban on letting agents charging tenants fees for doing their job, but there's not when it comes to company let. So you get quite a few agents that chirp up and say, oh, well, we want a company let fee, or things like that, which you're adding another 500, 750, £1,000 to your deal, and that massively impacts your projections. There's other hidden fees and extra costs as well. If you are looking into apartment blocks, is there a communal cost for the maintenance? Is there a concierge service? Never take a deal with a concierge service. But all of these things can be extra costs that you don't initially know, and they can ruin your deal. So please make sure you're looking out for those. Licensing fees. So if it's, if you're looking at HMOs, again, I know this is all about Airbnb, but if you're looking at HMOs, it needs to be stipulated in the contracts who is responsible for paying the HMO license when that comes up for renewal. If you're taking on a unit in an area which does require licensing for short-term lets, who's responsible for that license? Who's responsible for paying for that? It all needs to be accounted for up front. Insurance, again, sometimes you get landlords that say, yeah, we can do it, but obviously their buy-to-let insurance is no longer valid. They're going to have to get a different insurance policy, and they'll sometimes say, we want you to pay for that. Absolutely not. You'd have to insure the property anyway, but what we'll do is we'll pay the difference between what you're currently paying and what the new policy is. That's fine, but we need to know what that is to factor it into our costs, right? Seasonality, obviously, we went through that when we went through the spreadsheet. That can have a massive impact depending on your location. Some areas are not affected in any way, shape, or form. Some areas are affected quite heavily. So that's the sort of good versus bads. For me, just to add to that, for me, I will never really go for an apartment in an apartment block, not just because of head leasing problems, management problems, but also you've got, let's just imagine, you've got a terrace house. You've got two neighbours. If you're in an apartment block, it's quite likely that you've got a neighbour either side of you, one across the road from you, one above you, and one below you. And it just causes more issues than it's worth because you will get busybodies essentially reporting you. And, you could have, if you do unfortunately get a noisy guest, that can ruin the entire experience, even though it potentially is only for one night. So I personally would go for houses, bungalows, all the properties over apartments, and that's what makes a good deal for me. Okie dokie. So before we jump into that, let me just close this down and let's see all of your lovely faces or names, as I can see. Anybody got any questions for us based on, what makes a good deal, what makes a bad deal, how to analyze the area, how to analyze the deal? Please feel free, jump in. Hamoud, you've muted yourself now, but feel free unmute if you want to. Anybody at all? You don't have to speak. You can type it if you want. I must be doing a good webinar then if you all know all the answers, which is good. There we go. Cool. Okay, I'll keep an eye on the comments. If you do have questions, drop them in the comments. But as I said, there is a little bit of a treat for you guys. Here we go. So here we go. So as with every week, we have got a free 20-minute session. It's a free one-to-one with myself. So please, if you want to book that, John or Joy will drop the link in the comments now, and please go away and book that session. We have a giveaway. If you book that session, then you will get our spreadsheets free of charge thrown in with the session. So if you want those spreadsheets, all you got to do is sit with me for 20 minutes and you get a free copy of them. So feel free, go and book those sessions now. But during that session, we can understand your market. We can see how we can help you. Do you need a bit more tailored guidance or, fast tracking on your journey? You'll learn, you can ask questions about our systems, our processes, how we do things, how we run things. And then we can help to put a plan together for you of how to escape your 9 to 5, because ultimately that is the end goal for most people. But there are limited slots available. Friday, unfortunately, I won't be able to do because it's half term and I've got my little girl all to myself. So daddy daycare is in full swing. But if you do want a session, please do go and book one of those. If you can't find a time that suits, please drop me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and we'll find a time that fits for you, whether it's evenings or whatever it is. Next week's session, sorry, I've gone over the 45-minute timer today. Next week's session is Compliance 101. So there are currently compliance regulations that you have to adhere to, but there are a lot more coming in the future. As long as we know what we're doing and how to navigate them, we will be absolutely fine. Don't listen to the hype. Don't listen to all the naysayers that it's going to kill Airbnb. It is absolutely not going to kill Airbnb or rent to rent. We just need to know what we're doing. It's as simple as that. So please join us next week, 12 o'clock, same time, and we will run through all of the regulations for you to be compliant in your Airbnbs. Apart from that, I hope you've enjoyed the session. Oh, we've got a few. I've got a 3 on the comments. Nope, have I?
Yep, 2 questions.
Yep, there we go. So a couple of questions. So where do you get Deal Analyzer software? Do you mean the spreadsheet suit, or do you mean, software to actually do it for you? Feel free just to comment
Yeah,
in the
yeah, the spreadsheets.
Yeah, so if you we're giving them away for free. If you don't want to sit on a 20-minute session with me, that's absolutely fine. But we've got all our documents are for sale in our school community.
Right.
Yeah, if you sit with me for 20 minutes, then you get them for absolutely free. So there's a bit of
Thank you.
motivation for you. Stephen, so can market analysis make up for market knowledge, or is knowledge of the area fundamental? Both. Both are equally as important. We were only talking about this. Let me just turn off the sharing screen. We were talking about this with a client that we've got in our sourcing company today, and I personally, people who look for management companies to run their properties, I personally don't think that national management companies do as good a job as local management companies, simply because they haven't built the relationships. They aren't on the ground every day. I mean, our manager in our company in Chester, she if she walks down the street at lunchtime and she sees a guy in a hard hat, she'll go and speak to him and find out where he's staying. So it's the knowledge of the area, and the knowledge of the numbers and the analysis are equally as important, right? You might know all the numbers and think, yeah, that's fine. What happens if you just know the analysis but you don't know the area is you end up doing what we call fire and forget, which is happens to so many people, and that's why you see people join the Airbnb market or the rent SA market for 6 months and then exit. Is what they do is they take on a unit, generally through a deal sourcer, so they haven't got the experience of finding the deal, and then they put it out on Airbnb, Booking.com, and a couple of other platforms, and then they just sit back, cross their fingers, and go, "Wait, let's just wait for a booking." And what will happen is they'll get a couple of bookings straight away because Airbnb is promoting it. It's a new advertising. They will push it. Their algorithms will push it, and then about 6 to 8 weeks in, it starts to drop off, and then they really start struggling. Then their listing drops down the algorithm, drops down the pages, and all they've done is fire and forget. Whereas realistically, what you need to be doing is making relationships. Everything in property comes down to relationships and communication. But a really simple way of doing that is every single guest you have, call them on the second day of their stay, right? And just say, "Hi, Sue," just because I've seen your name there. "Hi, Sue. I hope the property's okay. It's Matt. I run the property. How is everything?" "Yep, great. No worries." "Oh, yeah, the knob's a little bit stiff," or whatever it is. Have a good chat with them, and then just say, "Oh, what are you doing in the area?" And you'd be amazed how many repeat bookings you get just from that one phone call. Because if it's they're up here to visit family. "Oh, well, great. Next time you're up visiting, give us a call. We can give you a better rate than Airbnb." Bang, you've got a direct booking, right? Some point in the future. If it's a contractor, "Oh, great. How long are you here for?" "Oh, we're here for the next 6 weeks." "Oh, have you got accommodation sorted yet?" "Yeah, for next week." "No." "Right. Well, look, how long are you here for? How many guys are there? Let's sort it out. We can do a deal, right? You've got a 6 week booking, right? Even if they're not staying. "Oh no, we finished this week." "Right, okay. Well, the job's not finished, is it?" "No." "Great. Do you know the next people that are coming to do it?" "Oh yeah, the second fix electricians or whatever it is are on site next week." "Oh, brilliant. You don't have their phone number, do you?" "I'll give them a call and see if we can get them in that accommodation." And then you have another phone call. "Hey, so and so's just told me you're working here for the next 6 weeks as of Monday. Have you got your accommodation sorted yet? Yes or no?" "No." "Brilliant. We can do your deal." That one phone call to every single guest will give you so much business in the future. You would be amazed, right? Little things like that. Leaving promotional material in your property so they can rebook your property. All of these little hints and tips are vital to building a sustainable business that isn't reliant on Airbnb and Booking.com. I know that's contradictory because our entire series, this series is called Airbnb Made Simple, but the idea is to pull them off Airbnb and get them direct. That's the best way to do it. I hope that answers your question there, Stephen. I went on a tangent there, but yeah, I hope that answers it. Cool. Any other questions at all? No, that's everything. Okie doke. Brilliant. We'll call it a day there then. I hope you enjoyed. As I said, next week, tune in for Compliance 101 to understand exactly what you do and what's required of you and what you do need to do to stay compliant. I'll catch you all soon. Take care.